The vanishing of the SS Waratah, the Titanic of the South, July 27, 1909. The South African coast is battered by howling winds. Waves rise like black walls, crashing with the roar of 1,000 cannons. And somewhere in that chaos, a massive passenger liner, 500 feet long and gleaming with promise, fights desperately against the storm. Her name is the SS Waratah. She is known proudly as the Titanic of the South, a luxurious steamship built to carry hundreds across oceans in style. Yet on this night, she will vanish into the sea without a trace. No wreckage, no lifeboats, no survivors, and to this day, no one knows why. The Waratah was built in Scotland in 1908, commissioned by the Blue Anchor Line. Designed as both a cargo vessel and passenger liner, she was state-of-the-art for her time. Capacity over 700 passengers. Design: twin decks, plush cabins, and grand saloons for wealthy travelers. Cargo hold: large enough to haul tons of goods across continents. She made her maiden voyage from London to Australia and back without incident, but whispers had already begun. Some sailors claimed she felt top-heavy, unstable in rough seas like a giant teetering on its toes. Others insisted she was safe, a triumph of modern engineering. Whatever the truth, her fate was sealed on her second voyage. On July 26, 1909, the Waratah departed Durban, South Africa, bound for Cape Town with 211 people on board, passengers and crew alike. Among them were families, businessmen, and emigrants chasing new lives. The weather had turned foul. Another ship, the Clan McIntyre, was sailing the same waters and sighted the Waratah struggling against rising swells. Passengers aboard the McIntyre later recalled seeing the great liner roll violently side to side, almost as if she were fighting for balance. And then by 9 a.m. on July 27th, she was gone. The Waratah never reached Cape Town. No distress signals, no lifeboats launched. No bodies. The disappearance shocked the world. The South African government, along with ships from Britain and Australia, launched extensive searches. For weeks, vessels combed thousands of miles of ocean. They found nothing, not a splinter of wood, not a scrap of clothing, not a drifting lifeboat. It was as though the Waratah had been erased from existence. The families of the lost were left in torment. Parents clung to hope their children might be adrift on lifeboats. Wives stood on Cape Town's docks waiting for husbands who would never arrive. The newspapers called her the ship that vanished. The mystery of the Waratah has haunted maritime history for more than a century. Many theories have been proposed, but none proven. Stability flaws. Some naval experts believe the ship was fundamentally unstable. Too much cargo stacked high. Too much weight carried above the waterline. A single giant wave could have rolled her onto her side. And once a ship of that size flips, it doesn't come back. To a freak wave. The South African coast is notorious for monstrous rogue waves, some rising as high as 90 feet. Survivors from other ships in the same storm reported terrifying seas. Perhaps one of these giants struck the Waratah, swallowing her whole in an instant. For explosion. Her cargo included flammable materials. Some suggest a sudden explosion may have ripped her apart, sending her to the bottom before anyone could react. But with no wreckage, the theory remains speculation. Caught in the Agulhas Current. The powerful Agulhas Current runs along South Africa's east coast, colliding with opposing winds to create some of the world's most dangerous seas. If the Waratah drifted too close, she may have been dragged down into a vortex of waves and currents too strong to survive. 5. Human error. Captain Ilbery, a respected sailor, was known for his confidence. Some wonder if he underestimated the storm, pressing ahead instead of seeking shelter. If true, the decision may have sealed the ship's fate. What makes the Waratah's story so chilling is the total absence of evidence. Even the Titanic, lost 3 years later, left behind thousands of bodies and debris. But the Waratah, nothing. It's as if the sea closed its jaws around her and kept it secret. Some locals whispered of curses, comparing her to the Flying Dutchman, the legendary ghost ship doomed to haunt the waters around the Cape. Sailors spoke of seeing phantom lights on the horizon, convinced they were the lost souls of the Waratah still wandering the waves. For decades, explorers and wreck hunters have searched for the Waratah. In the 1980s and 90s, sonar and submersibles scoured the seabed. Several wrecks were discovered, but none matched her description. To this day, the Waratah remains missing. The Indian Ocean has hidden her too well. The loss of the Waratah devastated families across continents. More than 200 lives gone without farewell. She became a symbol of the sea's merciless power. A warning that even the grandest ships could be claimed without warning. In maritime history, she is often compared to the Mary Celeste, another ghost ship, another unanswered riddle. But the Waratah's mystery is even darker, because she left behind nothing at all. No survivors, no wreckage, only silence. Imagine standing on the Cape Coast in July 1909, the storm raging, the horizon empty, and knowing that out there, beyond the breakers, a ship carrying hundreds has simply vanished. The ocean has never given up her secret. And perhaps that is why the story of the SS Waratah endures, not as a tale with an ending, but as a wound that never closed. The Titanic of the South set sail with dreams of glory, but the sea had other plans. And somewhere beneath the restless waters of South Africa, her steel hull sleeps, her passengers entombed in darkness, their story whispered only by the waves. December 5th, 1872. The Atlantic Ocean is restless, gray waves stretching endlessly toward the horizon. A British brigantine named De Gratia plows through the cold waters, her crew weary but sharp-eyed. Suddenly, they spot something strange in the distance. Another ship, drifting unevenly with her sails half raised, cutting an awkward, ghostly figure on the sea. At first, the crew believes she might be in distress, perhaps storm damaged, her sailors injured or struggling. But as they draw closer, something feels wrong. She rides too high in the water, as though empty of life. There's no signal flag, no voices, no movement on deck, only silence. When a boarding party finally climbs onto the Mary Celeste, what they find sends a shiver down their spines. The lifeboat is gone. The captain, his wife, their 2-year-old daughter, and the crew of 7 all vanished. The cabins are orderly, untouched, with clothing neatly stored. Food and fresh water enough to last 6 months remain abundant. The cargo, 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol, is fully intact, except for 9 barrels that appear to be empty, their seams strangely cracked. There are no signs of violence, no blood, no struggle. The ship isn't wrecked, in fact, she's perfectly seaworthy, and yet not a single soul remains aboard. The Mary Celeste is alive, but her people are gone. The crew of the Mary Celeste. The ship had sailed from New York Harbor on November 7, 1872, bound for Genoa, Italy. At her helm was Captain Benjamin Briggs, a highly respected sailor with decades of experience. Accompanying him was his wife, Sarah, and their young daughter, Sophia, only 2 years old. Their 7-man crew was made up of skilled sailors, carefully chosen by Briggs himself. Everything about this voyage seemed routine. The weather was fair, the cargo valuable, and the ship itself was in strong condition. Briggs had even written cheerful letters to family just before departure, speaking of good fortune and his hopes for a smooth passage. Yet less than a month later, his ship would be found adrift, his entire party gone without a trace. The discovery. When the De Gratia crew inspected the vessel, they noted several strange details. The ship's chronometer and sextant were missing, crucial tools for navigation. The lifeboat was gone, though the davits suggested it had been lowered carefully rather than torn away in panic. The ship's pumps showed no sign of failure, but the bilges contained some water. Not unusual, but perhaps concerning. Captain Briggs's logbook entries stopped abruptly on November 25th, 8 days before the ship was found. His final note made no mention of trouble, only a calm observation of location near the Azores. The ship was then sailed to Gibraltar, where an inquiry was held to determine what had happened. But the hearings only deepened the mystery. Over the decades, countless theories have been proposed, each one attempting to explain the fate of the Mary Celeste. Mutiny. Some believed the crew turned against Captain Briggs, murdered him and his family, and fled in the lifeboat. But no blood, no evidence of violence, and no plundered cargo supported this idea. Why leave behind 6 months of provisions and a perfectly good ship? 2. Pirates. Could pirates have attacked, taken the people, and abandoned the ship? Again, unlikely. The cargo remained untouched, as did personal belongings like jewelry and money. Pirates take valuables, but nothing was missing. Alcohol fumes. The ship carried barrels of raw industrial alcohol. Some speculate that leaking fumes caused panic. The crew may have feared explosion and abandoned ship temporarily. But why would experienced sailors take such drastic action when the ship itself was unharmed? And if they left, why didn't they return? 4. Rogue wave. Others suggest a sudden rogue wave might have swept over the deck, forcing Briggs to evacuate. But the evidence doesn't match. The ship wasn't damaged and the sails weren't shredded by a violent storm. Seismic activity. a seaquake and an underwater earthquake, and could have shaken the ship violently, making the crew believe she was sinking. In panic, they may have boarded the lifeboat only to be lost at sea. But again, no damage supported this theory. 6 supernatural explanations. And then, of course, came the wild theories. Ghost ships, sea monsters, alien abduction. The Mary Celeste quickly became a legend whispered in sailors' taverns and popularized in newspapers. The lack of clear answers made her a canvas for imagination, a riddle that refused to be solved. The legacy of the Mary Celeste. The abandoned vessel remained under new ownership for years after the tragedy, continuing to sail until she was deliberately wrecked for insurance fraud in 1885. But the mystery of her lost crew never faded. For Captain Briggs, his wife Sarah, their daughter Sophia, and the 7 crewmen, no remains were ever found. The ocean swallowed them whole. Today, the Mary Celeste is remembered not simply as a ship, but as a story, one of the greatest maritime mysteries in history. She has inspired novels, films, documentaries, and countless retellings, each searching for a truth that may never be known. What really happened on the Mary Celeste in November of 1872? Was it panic? Was it a mistake? Was it something more sinister? No one knows, and perhaps no one ever will. But one thing is certain. The image of that ghost ship drifting silently through the Atlantic, her crew vanished without a trace, will haunt the seas forever.